Okay, well, thank you for joining the Montclair City Council meeting on this December the 2nd. And we'll begin the meeting with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask the city clerk to announce those two individuals.
Tonight's invocation will be given by Diana Delgado of Chaplains of the Streets, and Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Great, thank you. All right, Diana, come on up.
Good evening, everybody. Praise the Lord. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for our city. We thank you for our elected officials, the businesses, the churches, the families, and the individuals that make Montclair the great place that it is. I pray for this council meeting tonight. Give the council members wisdom and guidance as they deliberate on the items before them. May every decision be righteous in your sight for our benefit and for your glory. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Please join me as we salute our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll now begin with the roll call.
Councilmember Lopez.
I'm here.
Councilmember Martinez. Here. Councilmember Rue.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
I'm here.
And Mayor Dutray.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, next one will be presentations, and this evening we're going to introduce some new fire department employees and promotees. So I'm going to ask our fire chief, David Poole, come on up to the podium, and then my council colleagues, please join me in the bottom.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager Starr, City staff. I'd like to take this time, and it's a privilege for me to introduce two new hires along with two recent promotions that we've had in the fire service at our fire department. And our first one that I want to honor tonight is Ricardo Flores. Go up there. Ricardo was hired as a firefighter paramedic with the Montclair Fire Department on October 21st, 2024. Ricardo worked as a paramedic for the Rancho Division for 2 years before getting hired for the city of Montclair. He started his path to a firefighter career in 2017 after completing his EMT course and fire academy at Mount San Antonio College. Ricardo started working as an ambulance operator for the city of Huntington Beach in 2019 and 20. Ricardo then worked for 2 fire seasons with CAL FIRE as a seasonal firefighter. Ricardo left the CAL FIRE to attend paramedic school in 2021, which was completed after his internship here with the Montclair Fire Department. So we have a young man that we helped tutor here in our city. Ricardo would like to express his sincerest thanks to all those who have supported him over the years. He believes he would not have accomplished all that he has or be in the position he is today without the support of his family and friends. He is thankful for this wonderful opportunity and looking forward to a long, rewarding career with the city of Montclair. Ricardo Flores. Congratulations. Go ahead and go down there. Next, I would like to introduce Candace Reve Jones. She was hired as a firefighter paramedic for the fire department in October of 21st of 24. Becoming a firefighter paramedic was a career change for Candace, who has 2 bachelor's degrees, one in American Studies, the other in Film Studies. She also has a master's degree in communications with an emphasis on film writing, all from her alma mater, Cal State Fullerton. After Candace worked in the film industry for a couple of years, she experienced a life-altering event that inspired her to become a first responder. And if you ever have the chance to talk to her about that, I encourage you to do so. Jones went back to school and received her Associate of Science in Paramedic Medicine from Moreno Valley College and a Fire Academy certification from the College of the Desert. She has worked for AMR Riverside County, the Hemet Division, as a paramedic for 2 years and currently works as an EMT instructor for Social EMS Training Institute along with the Montclair Fire Department. Candace would like to thank her family and friends for all of their support. And if you haven't noticed another thing too, we're getting ready to start a basketball team, so. Next this is Michael Sanchez. In 2006, Mike became an EMT and worked for emergency ambulance service for 6 years. Emergency had 911 contact with Fort Brea, Yorba Linda, and Placentia, where he was able to gain valuable experience running 911 calls. While working for emergency, he also became a volunteer firefighter for La Habra Heights Fire Department. He worked for La Habra Heights Fire Department for 5 years. In 2013, he was hired by Kern County Fire. He had the chance to fight large wildland fires, structure fires, vehicle fires, all types of incidents that he ran on. And after working as a firefighter for 70 years, he was promoted to engineer. He worked as an engineer for 2 years. He became a hazardous material specialist. He is currently a confined space rescue technician, low and high angle rope rescue technician, swift water and trench rescue certified also. In February of 22, he was hired by the Montclair Fire Department as a lateral engineer. During his time here, he has taught multiple recruit orientation academies. He currently teaches firefighter survival and rapid intervention crew tactics to the new recruits. He is part of our training committee, and he is also in charge of our department PPEs and uniform program. Hopefully, we look okay. He was promoted to the rank of captain in June of 24. Currently, he has completed his company officer training series courses and is enrolled at Columbia Southern University to finish his bachelor's degree in fire administration. He would like to thank his family and friends for their continued support throughout the years. Michael Sanchez. Go ahead. Next, I'd like to introduce Stan Baum. Stan was promoted from captain to battalion chief in June. Stan Baum's career with the Montclair Fire Department began in January of 2012 when he was hired as a firefighter paramedic. In April of 2017, he promoted to fire engineer and was promoted again in August of 2020 to fire captain. During his tenure with the Montclair Fire Department, Stanley has served as paramedic preceptor, a proctor for the new hire firefighter paramedic testing, and has had an active role in training and testing of probationary firefighter paramedics. He also serves as an instructor for our active shooter program and has served on the department training committee for the past 7 years. We rely heavily on him for his expertise in training our new cadets and recruits. In June of 2024, Stan was promoted to the rank of battalion chief, where he oversees the department's emergency medical services. Since being promoted, he has been active in putting in place new narcotics reporting software, purchasing new equipment for the medic squad, and overall revamping of the department's EMS protocols. Chief Baum holds an associate's degree in fire science technology and paramedic certificate too, an A in that. He is in process of completing a bachelor's degree in fire administration from Columbia Southern University. He is also in the process of completing his chief officer certification. Stanley would like to thank his family and for all their love and support he has received during his career. He loves his family very much and is honored to serve the citizens of Montclair as a battalion chief. That concludes my presentations, Mr. Mayor.
On behalf of the Montclair City Council, I want to congratulate all the new fire personnel, obviously the promotees, and obviously all of our staff members in the fire department. Thank you very much. Next item would be a public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the city council on either the business or consent calendar items or any items that are on the agenda. You have 5 minutes. So at this time, I'm going to ask the city clerk, do you have any speaker cards, with exception of public hearing items? Do you have any speaker cards?
Yes, I have one from Cassandra from Main Event Entertainment.
Okay. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, my name's Cassandra. I'm from Main Event Entertainment. We are a new facility that's opening up at the Montclair Place Mall. I'm sure you guys have seen our lovely sign off of the highway. But we are a family-friendly establishment. We're gonna have bowling lanes, laser tag. We'll have a full arcade game floor, as well as a full restaurant and a bar. So I just came here to invite all of you guys to come by and see us. Come have fun with your friends, your family. We open up on January 22nd, so I wish we could host all of the holiday parties going on. Honestly, I've been getting so many calls, but January will be open. We do anything from birthday parties. We do group events, corporate events, full facility buyouts. So you name it. We also have meeting space there as well. So I just wanted to extend the invitation. Everybody from the city has been amazing. Thank you, Ms. Denise, for inviting me here today. I'm also going to be the guest speaker at the Chamber Networking Breakfast on the 12th. So I'll be giving a full presentation at that event. So hope to see you guys there and hope to see you guys at Main Event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, I'm sorry, that's January 22nd.
It's a
Make sure I have the right date. You open in the morning, or are you doing a grand opening?
Grand opening, yes. Grand opening, I believe at about 10 a.m.
Okay, 10 a.m., all right.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember, go ahead.
Mr.
Denise.
Mayor, if I may, I have a question for Cassandra.
Yeah.
I know that Main Event is very progressive and you have a plethora of activities. But I
Yes.
wonder if you could share with us today and to the people who are listening online. Can
Yeah.
you share to us that laser tag program?
Yes, absolutely. So we, as a Main Event, as an organization, we will be the 65th center to open nationwide. We're only as far as Arizona right now. So I did not mention we are going to be the first one in California. So very excited to be here in this city. Again, I've been hit with nothing but extended open arms. So thank you for that. We will be only the second in the company to have this very special laser tag experience, and it's going to be called Gel Blaster. And what Gel Blaster is, it's a mixture of laser tag and paintball. So when the balls hit you or hit your body, they actually evaporate into thin air. So it's going to be state of the art. Also, the video arcade game floor, these are like huge humongous games that I'm like, I've never seen this game in my life. So really awesome. Normally we have about 120 games, but our arcade floor will have 160 games. So we also have lots of program for youth, anything from field trips, youth sports banquets. We do nonprofit events, all sorts of things, you name it. Again, I would love to partner with everybody.
And I have one more question.
Yeah.
Can you share with us your hiring event?
Yes. Right now we are hiring anything from bussers, servers, bartenders, bowling attendants, game attendants. We are looking for 18 and over. I'm also looking for hopefully bilingual event coordinators. And we are also looking for technicians. And all of that could be found on our website at mainevent.com on the very bottom under careers. Yes, thank you guys. Have a great night.
Thank you. Councilman Lopez.
Cassandra,
one more
don't-
wants to talk to you.
Don't go far, don't go too far. Come back to the podium, please. First of all, do you have any business cards?
I do,
Okay,
yes.
do you mind giving them to the city clerk? To
Absolutely.
give to the council members? And then I had a couple questions. You stated that you're the breakfast speaker at the 12th meeting. Are we talking January? Okay.
December
Next-
12th.
Oh, December.
Next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next Thursday?
That's at 8 a.m. or 7?
It's at 8:30.
8:30, yeah.
And you stated you had a full restaurant, a bar, then you said there was a floor of what now? I was writing
We
notes and I
also
missed
have,
that.
we'll have 20 bowling lanes, 5 of which are actually called like a VIP lane. It'll be very like photo aesthetic, you know, picture-worthy type of VIP experience. We also have meeting rooms that can host up to 120 people.
Oh, thank you. And your laser tag,
Gel blaster.
your gel blast, it
Yeah.
sounds like the city council needs to be the first ones to break that in.
Yeah, I think so.
Perhaps-
I will make sure that happens for you.
I think some members would have more fun with it than others.
Oh, yeah, they're all gonna aim for you.
Probably so, you're right, that's why I said that. I think everyone was thinking it.
We can include the city manager and department heads. Make
There
it
you
way
go.
more
There-
interesting.
Oh, then for sure, well, thank God they evaporate.
the
How
police
about
I
that?
know, right?
On my team, I got the police chief.
But that actually wouldn't be a bad idea to have some type of fundraiser with respect to
Yes.
something like that. We could pick a
Alright.
charity, but anyhow, thank you for coming
Absolutely.
tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes,
and
thank you, guys.
I look forward to frequenting the establishment.
Absolutely. Thank you so
Much
much.
success to you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming. You need,
I have no more cards.
okay. All right, we'll now go down to public hearing, and we'll start with the first item, which is consideration of the CDBG grant funds. Can I get a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City
And I'll open
Council.
the public hearing.
For fiscal year 25-26, city staff does anticipate receiving approximately $248,457 from the Community Development Black Block Grant Program. This represents approximately $18,000 decrease from our 24-25 allocation, which was $266,647. As indicated on page 5 of your agenda packet, you will see that staff is recommending the following programs for funding. $50,000 for the city's code enforcement program, $161,188 for the Rear House Historic Ranch renovations. We did not have any monies allocated out of the current year to the Reader Ranch. That money instead this year went to alleyway improvements. $27,769 for the city's graffiti abatement program, and $9,500 for operation of the Golden Express Senior Transportation Services Program. Those total the $248,457, which would be our allocation for next fiscal year. No outside agencies submitted requests for any of the city's public service allocation. So all of the public service allocation, which is approximately $37,269, will be allocated strictly to the city's graffiti abatement program and operation of the Golden Express Transportation Services. Fiscal impact, again, the city expects to receive $248,457 in CDBG money for fiscal year 24-25, and it is staff's recommendation that City Council approve the prioritization of projects as outlined in the agenda report and as discussed with you right now.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address the city council? No? Nobody? We'll close the public hearing. I'm bringing the item back to the city council. Do I have any comments, or do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, second by Councilman Lopez. We'll do electronic vote. That item is adopted, 5-0. And we will now go on to our second public hearing item. This is to essentially consideration of adoption of the general plan with all the additional documents that come with it. I know this is going to be a very long process, and we also have conflict of interest issues that the city attorney will be talking to us about, that we have to recuse ourselves. Before I move on, do any of the council members have to need to talk to the city attorney? I know she's, I believe, talked to, not all of us, but the ones with the conflict of interest issues. Does anybody need a private consultation with the city attorney? Everybody's good to proceed at this time, city attorney? Okay, good. Okay, then we will move forward. And that little cheat sheet here, I'll have to find that. I believe you all have the same cheat sheet I'll be looking at. So at this time, first of all, I'm going to open this public hearing for all the actions that this council will be considering. And then I believe now we will begin with the staff report. And who will take the lead on the staff report?
Mr. Mayor, the presenter of the agenda report this evening, at least a brief summary of the agenda report, will be Mr. Diaz, our community development, our Director of Community Development. As you indicated, this is going to be a prolonged process this evening. We expect that it will take at least an hour, if not 2 hours, to get through the process. And so Mr. Diaz will lead the discussion with again, a brief summary of the agenda report, with emphasis that this has been a more than 6-year process. Staff has committed, along with the consultants, innumerable hours in relation to producing the documents that are before you this evening for your consideration. As you know, it went before the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and they unanimously approved and recommended to the City Council your consideration and approval of the documents being presented to you this evening. And we want to emphasize that the general plan and the associated documents are organic documents. They are living documents. They will evolve and change over the course of the next 20 years, which is the typical lifespan of a general plan update. During those 20 years, of course, the City Council will make a number of changes and amendments to the general plan, which is typical. And so we want to emphasize again that the documents you are considering this evening are not in concrete. They are documents that will continuously evolve. There are no specific mandates in the document. Rather, this is a opportunity to provide vision and guidance to the City Council, the city staff, and community. The documents provide a measure of guidance, flexibility, and opportunity for the landowners in the community. And with that, I'll now turn it over to Mr. Diaz to provide his summary of the agenda report.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Dutray, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, and fellow council members. I'm gonna make just a few comments on the staff report and the process that we've gone through for the last 6 years before we let the consultants, I introduce the consultants to you again and let them make their presentation. So the first thing I wanted to say, this is a sort of momentous day for us. We've been working towards getting this document, the 2020 General Plan Update and associate documents before you so that you can take action. The process, as Mr. Starr indicated, began in 2018, and over the past 6 years, including a pandemic break for about 2 years that slowed things down, city staff has been steadfast in working towards getting this document completed, and the various aspects that are involved with this sometimes took some time to work out and make consistent with each other. But we are happy to say that this is we're at the goal line here, so we're hoping to get over and to get a major score. So as you know, the general plan is a mandated requirement of the state, and it's for all cities and counties in the state that is required to help us guide long-term growth, development, and management of the land, which in our case applies to all the land within our corporate boundaries. The 2020 general plan update will provide the framework and vision for the city that builds on the good work that we've done through the past years with the last general plan, and prepares us and enables us to work towards a better, even better future for the next 20 years, for the time frame for which this general plan, if adopted tonight, would cover. So we're excited and happy to be at this particular point in time. I know I'm happy that we're almost completed with this. And the general plan, as I mentioned earlier, establishes, or was been mentioned earlier, the city's long-range vision for the community, and it sets forth principles, goals, policies, and actions to help us achieve the community vision we're looking towards creating here. Yeah. Once adopted, the general plan will be used regularly by the City Council, by the Planning Commission, and staff in making important decisions regarding land use in our community and other aspects that are covered by the other elements in the general plan. The second thing I'd like to mention is that as part of this general plan update process and project, we also included two other documents that are important for implementing those particular goals and vision statements that we have in the general plan, and that's the Arrow Highway mixed-use specific plan. This plan focuses, and it's covered in your staff report, on the northeast and northwest corners of Montclair, along our north border, and particularly along Arrow Highway, as is depicted in the exhibit number C that's in your packets. The Amwood specific plan will replace the existing North Montclair specific plan, which has served the community since 1997, and so it's done its job. It's time to be updated, and that's what the Arrow Highway or Amwood specific plan is intended to complete. The other document is the Montclair Corridors Code, and this document amends the development code of the zoning code that we have now, Chapter 11, and the Montclair Corridors Code will include a creation of new zoning designations and development standards for the Central Avenue corridor that's south of the I-10 freeway, the Hope Boulevard a complete run from east to west, as well as the Mission Boulevard corridor from east to west. The boundaries of those, this particular corridors code is identified in Exhibit D of your staff report. What's important to note about these two documents is that while there will be new names for zoning districts, the above-mentioned documents do not make wholesale changes to zoning designations that already exist in these areas. That is that the properties, for example, that are currently commercial now will be commercial later, and industrial now will be industrial later. However, the new documents will create more land use opportunities within these zoning districts, and one of those aspects is mixed-use development under the right conditions that are outlined in these documents. And it also will provide new, updated, and up-to-date development standards that can result in better use of the property and foster better design solutions for these projects that contribute to an attractive streetscape, which is what we all want to see done over time. It does not change any legally approved uses that are on the property. So no one's being kicked out, forced, or changed to do anything different than they might be doing now. It also allows for new development to occur if such time occurs for these property owners to maybe assemble properties or to convert their properties to something new and more vital for their particular use and interest that would also contribute to the streetscape and to the city's benefit overall. So that's important to note about those two documents. We're not making anybody non-conforming or making them change anything. They can continue to keep what they have and has been legally established. The third thing I wanted to note that there's, in this particular document, as we consider this tonight, the general plan includes the housing element. And the housing element is very important to us because it's the only element of the general plan that's required to be updated more frequently than the general plan as it is overall. So the cycle is 8 years, and we are in the process of trying to get this approved tonight so that we can satisfy state requirements for having a housing element that they can certify. And one of those, Okay. That's okay.
I apologize if I just stopped your comment. We're going to stop for a second and wait for everybody to walk back in. Sorry about that.
Will do, okay.
Thank you. So we're adjourned for at 7:30. Okay, I apologize again for Mike for interrupting your presentation, but please proceed. I know.
Okay. What I wanted to bring up was on the, my third point was that as part of the general plan update, there's the housing element. And the housing element is, as I mentioned earlier, is the only element that has a definite time limit and needs to be updated every 8 years. So we're in the middle of that, finishing that cycle and get that completed to satisfy the state's requirement for certified housing elements. And your action tonight as part of your actions tonight will cover and approve the specific, the general plan, the housing elements so that we can move forward to submitting that to HCD, which is the Department of Housing and Community Development, and satisfy the requirement for a certified housing element. So just wanted to make
Mike, you
sure.
also want to mention that the council did already approve a draft of the housing element back in 2021?
Yes, that's correct, and we did actually submit that element to, or that, yes, the element to HCD, and they were satisfied with us being able to meet their requirements. This is just a final formality on your part as part of this general plan update that we need to make sure that we can get to the finish line with so that we can satisfy that state requirement. With a certified housing element, we're able to participate in being able to apply for grants and to receive grants for housing related initiatives that the state would require us to do. And so without it, we can't comply or can't apply, but with an approved housing element, we can. So just want to make sure that you can do that. So in wrapping up my preliminary comments, I wanted to note that also that the Planning Commission, as mentioned by Mr. Starr, they took up all these items and made recommendations for you. Those were included as Exhibit H in your staff report. So you can see what the Planning Commission did in terms of their recommendations for you. They were all recommendations for you to approve the actions that are being requested to you tonight. So you have that for your record. So with that, I wanted to introduce our general plan team that worked with us, that is staff, and the main player, if you want to call him that, is Kaiser Rangwala, and he will be making the presentation on the general plan as we go forward. But as part of that team, we also have Greg Martin from the Rincon Consultants. He'll be talking about anything related to the environmental impact report, and he's here in the audience. Online, we have Erica Leonard of Rincon Consultants. She will be speaking on anything you might have about the Climate Action Plan. And then there's Sarah Walker of the National Community Renaissance Company or Group, and she'll discuss the housing element and answer any questions you might have with that. And then finally, we have Alicia Winterswijk from Best and Krieger, who has been part of our special counsel team that will help us get through major parts of this process. And so she's here available if you have any questions related to maybe the environmental impact or any other aspect of this particular project. So with that, I would defer to my colleague and friend, Kaiser Rangwala.
Greetings, Mayor, members of the City Council, staff, and members of the community. As has been already reiterated, tonight does really mark a historic milestone for the City of Montclair. Before you is a comprehensive vision for preservation, for growth, and for reinvestment. It's actually 5 documents put together. A strategic and a forward-thinking response to the present-day challenges that we face in terms of fiscal, in terms of climate, and in terms of housing. A very cogent response and a very powerful and a compelling response. And these 5 plans put together, it represents an incredible accomplishment. And it reflects the leadership of the City Council. It reflects the innumerable hours that your commissions and committees, particularly the Planning Commission, have poured in, working, refining, reflecting, providing feedback on various components of various elements of the documents that you have before you. And the tireless effort and the unflinching support and feedback that we've received throughout this process from this community. It is bitter sad that 6 years and 6 months are coming to an end. But it has left us with very pleasant memories, and we will walk away from that with our head held high. While we cannot predict the future and know exactly what's going to happen in the next few years, or even looking out, as Mike mentioned, this is a 20-year plan. It is still essential that we must plan. We must take proactive decisions and set goals to prepare for potential scenarios, even though those scenarios may not pan out, even though we may be disrupted by unforeseen events. We must plan still. And it is in this context that I take the city manager's comment about this being a dynamic document. The city cannot afford to visit this once every 20 years. Those are days of the past. It's gone. You have to visit this every year or every other year. And if you think about the Planning Commission's role, I think your Planning Commission is your body that's going to help you provide that review and that oversight over the general plan and its implementation. But these are documents that we have prepared based on the best information that's available today, both in terms of the opportunities that are available, as well as the threats and concerns that Southern California cities face. You have 5 documents, and I was just walking in and I saw those documents there. And if you put in the EIR, that totals up to 1,613 pages. Now, you'd be inhuman if you were to review all of that and in a weekend or a week's time or a month's time. I don't know. I'm the project manager, and I'd still have to refer to the book for 1,600 pages to find something if I'm looking for it. So it is likely, and it's very natural, that when you look at 1,600 pages, that there might be some things that you may be uncertain about. And I would say weigh that against the purpose of the general plan. And if I would encourage you that if the majority of the plan aligns with that purpose, then I think it's worth moving forward. Put a pin on those items that you're uncertain about, because again, it's 1,600 pages of policy and regulations. And it is very natural to have. I mean, me and my wife don't agree on the breakfast we're gonna have in the morning. So it is natural to have concerns, doubts about those. But again, focus on the majority, focus on the vision that you have before you. Put a flag on the concern, and let's monitor it. Let's monitor it for a year, because I am on tap for a year. And I commit, if I'm alive, to come back for a year from now and tailor this further to suit your needs. So that's our promise as we move forward. And I've made this presentation to you several times. So I'm going to skip through this real fast and get through the evening, and then entertain questions that either the council or members of the community may have. So we're working on a general plan, which is a citywide scale, and then the specific plan, which is a much deeper dive at certain areas of the city, particularly north of the freeway, on either side of the city, either side of the downtown area along Arrow Highway. The specific plan is different from a general plan in that it contains a code, not just a policy document or framework, but also has development regulations and a plan for implementation as you move forward. And then corridor code that looks at bringing, as Community Development Director Michael Diaz pointed out, bringing the regulations in conformance with the general plan vision. So you have a corridors code that does that. Again, as he mentioned, it's essentially using all of the land uses that are already there, and I'll mention this again and again, that we're not changing land uses, we're not taking away people's rights, we're actually giving them more options. More options for mobility, more options to build, more options for different types of uses, more options to create places that have lasting value. There are two additional items. One is required by the state, and that's the. I will. Thank you. Sorry about that. There are two additional items that are added as part of this effort, and that's the housing element that Mike spoke about, and the climate action plan. And it's a great opportunity that as you work on the general plan, you get to work on these two issues, because when you're working on housing, it's not just providing housing, but it's providing all of the ancillary services. And guess where that gets addressed? In the general plan. The climate action plan is looking at how do you reduce greenhouse gases. The major cause of greenhouse gases, vehicle miles traveled. How are we going to reduce that? The combination of looking at land uses and transportation, reducing the vehicle miles traveled, and looking at various strategies in the general plan. So working on these documents simultaneously provides you that robust policy framework to move the city together in the future and address some of the crises, the climate change crisis and the fiscal crisis and the housing crisis that we stated. All of this comes under a program EIR, which is again a huge benefit, because as you're trying to attract development, the number one incentive that a city can give to a developer is a compelling vision, clear and precise codes, and a streamlined process. If you have these three things in place, which you now do, you're open for business. That's a huge incentive that you can offer that puts you in a very competitive advantage when you're in the Southern California area trying to compete to get businesses to locate here. So I'll walk you through the general plan first. As you are aware, the general plan has 8 different focus areas. These are very plain speak terms. We talk about natural areas as opposed to the legislative framework, which talks about conservation and open spaces. We talk about our well-planned community as opposed to land uses, our accessible community. So we're using terms that people can relate to, and the chapters are organized there. But they are covering all of the required elements within the general plan, including various other optional elements that are recommended in the general plan. And I'm going to walk you through all of these. Now, when you work on a plan for 6 years, what happens? You have several other planning efforts that build off. And your city and this city in particular has been just enormously successful in getting numerous grants to work on various efforts that have parlayed into the general plan very well and have moved the general plan implementation further along. So you have all of these efforts happening in the 6 years that are looking at the general plan and are informing the general plan about changes. As they study further, we make changes to the general plan simultaneously. This is a plan that is produced in the public realm. There were numerous meetings. Thousands of residents participated in thousands of hours, provided qualitative information through surveys, through interviews. We had focus group meetings, both during the discovery part of the effort as well as during the visioning and the policy framework part. But at the heart of this was a 4-day charrette when we moved our offices here within the city of Montclair. And a number of you participated, and a number of you can see yourselves in the images. The charrette was where the community came together and worked in short iterative loops, providing feedback, and we could come back immediately the next day and say, okay, this is what we heard, and here's what we have come up with based on your comments, saying, no, you got this right, please change that. We worked through that feedback loop for 4 days, and at the end, we had a vision, community-supported vision, that was essentially based on 6 different items. To create a green network and a green infrastructure, and I'll talk about that briefly in our natural community. Streets that are reimagined, not just for moving traffic, but streets constitute about 20-25% of your city's land. And if you just use them for moving traffic, that's land not optimized to its maximum potential. Streets can be conceived as places, as public places of gathering, as places of commerce, as they used to be in the past, with options to provide mobility for all ages and all walks of lives. Reinforcing the great neighborhoods that you have within Montclair, connecting them, reinforcing the northern part with the downtown, transforming the mall to a town center, and then reviving the manufacturing in the Armwood area as well as along Holt and Mission Boulevard. So the main focus of the general plan and the main focus of directing growth was primarily north of the freeway in the downtown area around the Trans Center, and then on the corridors of Central, Holt, and Mission. And what you see on the right-hand side is a built-out map, is a built-out rendering, and this may take perhaps 100 years. It may take even longer, but it's with that in mind that we're working in 20-year increments. And this plan cycle has a 20-year sunset date, but we're looking at what happens beyond that 20-year time frame. As we're looking at the past 100 years, we're also looking at how we move forward for the next 100 years, and then working incrementally towards that end. And I'm going to walk you through different chapters of the general plan. The first chapter is our natural community, which primarily discusses green infrastructure, and green infrastructure is a combination. It's a network and a combination of natural and semi-natural networks that help us with our environmental challenges and quality of life. It's looking at the San Antonio Channel, the open spaces, the drainage basins that you have, and then looking at all of the assets and how we can connect and weave together those assets with a green network of streets, of open spaces, and corridors that serve multiple benefits. So here's a rendering of what the San Antonio Channel could perhaps be reconceptualized as. Rather than people turning their backs, it becomes an address that people want to face out to look out to. It becomes a recreational area for evening walks or for bicycling, as well as an opportunity for economic development, to attract economic development along its path. The second chapter, and I'm just giving you a sort of a Cliff's Note version. Obviously, there's a lot behind some of these topics, and there are various other subtopics that the general plan dwells into. And I'm happy to discuss anything that you may fancy. The 3 items that the prosperous community focuses on is attracting development around the Trans Center, around the downtown area, and using that as an opportunity to create places of lasting value, and that add character and meaning. And then while we are trying to attract development and new residents, we also want to support our local businesses. So it's looking at variety of programs to facilitate local businesses, to facilitate growth and expansion in the local businesses. And then looking at fiscal opportunities, to look at our land, because we are not making any more land, right? We have to use our land more productively. A great example is what you're doing at the mall. Big, huge building surrounded by acres of parking, being transformed into a Main Street environment that has buildings, and those buildings are 2, 3, 4, perhaps even taller. That's a more productive land use. More productive land use results in more fiscal revenues for the city when you compare it with larger format retail centers. So here's a rendering, and I was looking at this earlier, and this the image to the left is what you're building right now. And here's a conceptualization of what we were hoping would happen within the next 20 years. So you were well ahead of the curve in building some of the development already within your downtown area. This is a well-planned community, looks at existing land uses, and it looks at opportunities that are available within the city for growth, for reinvestment in different categories of those land uses: residential, hotel, office, industrial, and retail. And as I mentioned earlier, in this area, primarily in the land use map, we designate that growth. Where is it gonna take place? It's gonna take place in the downtown area, in the Amud areas, and along the corridors. And I'll get back to this map later on and discuss in greater detail. As we look at corridors, we also want to look at neighborhoods and the impact on the neighborhoods, particularly the neighborhoods that abut right next to the corridor. And we want to have a graceful transition between the higher intensity development, that mixed-use development that we are trying to attract on the corridor, and the existing residential neighborhoods. So we looked at building types that could act as a transition. So here's a rendering showing a house-like form, perhaps accommodating 2, maybe even 4 units, that's right across the street from an existing residential development. Our accessible community chapter looks at how we can provide access, because the goal of mobility is not a trip, not a vehicle trip, it's to provide access to all of your daily needs. And in this case, we are looking at first mile, last mile connection. So if you have a trip to work that takes you out of the city and you're using the transit system, how do you get to the transit system? Are you driving there? Or are there other options that are available? And then when you come back, what is the option to go back to your home? So we're looking at a variety of micro-transit opportunities that are available and incorporating that into a concept called a mobility hub, and reconceptualizing streets so that they are they're friendlier and comfortable places for not just driving, but also for a variety of modes of transportation. Here's one of the mobility hubs at the corner of Central and Holt. Again, this is a rendering, but it shows a variety of options that will be available at the transit stops. So if you get off a transit bus or a train, what are some of the options that are available to get you to your last mile to your place of residence? Central Avenue, again, as we're looking at bike lanes, we want to make sure those bike lanes are not just comfortable, but also safe and protected bike lanes, but also look at opportunities to, in many cases, create frontages that are engaging. So they are not just comfortable, safe, but they're also engaging places where people can walk up and down. A healthy community looks at how we can design our cities to be healthy places, but then also look at now in post-pandemic era, how we can make our buildings to be safe places. Because we just soon realize the value of having a balcony when we were inside a house, when we were enclosed in an area, having access to open space, having ventilation, having natural ventilation, all of those items are called out in the general plan and encouraged. Our safe community, the focus again here is prevention, whether it's fire, police, or emergency service. And then prepare and respond effectively to any natural or man-made disaster or pandemic events that may be looming in the horizon. Our active community looks at how we can, again, take the green infrastructure and expand our inventory of open spaces, enhance access, and as we are increasing open space and access, we want to make sure that it's financially resilient because you have a limited pot of money and we want to explore a variety of options that are out there to support and maintain open spaces. Everything from the public realm to the private realm and a continuous of open spaces. Our creative community looks at how we can weave arts and culture. And as you look at this map, every time we present this map, we have to update it. And that's a good thing, because that means you're adding to the rich fabric of arts and culture that you have within the city. So it's creating programs that celebrate the diversity, but at the same time using those opportunities to attract economic development within the city. This is an incremental plan. As I mentioned, it's a 20-year cycle, and we have identified a range of short-term, easy, and immediate items that you can work on, and some that you can plan for as money becomes available, as grants become available. And we've also identified resources that are available, including identifying individuals that will carry out those tasks. So with that, I will pause and I'll invite Greg to present the environmental report.
Thank you, Kaiser. I'll try to speak right into the microphone as much as possible, going loudly enough. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Greg Martin. I'm a planner with Rincon Consultants, and was the project manager, and am the project manager for the environmental impact report and the whole CEQA process for this project. So, there we go, good. So as it shows on this slide, the purposes of CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, is to disclose the potential significant environmental effects of proposed actions, such as the ones that you're considering tonight, identify ways to avoid or reduce potential adverse effects, environmental effects from those projects, consider feasible alternatives to proposed actions, also to foster interagency coordination and the review of projects, meaning other agencies, other cities, the county, various regional agencies, the state, et cetera, and to enhance public participation in the planning process. And those two last items are accomplished through various public noticing and public meetings that I'll describe on the next few slides. So, here we go. So this slide shows the EIR process, and it's a flow chart. It's a standard chart that we use to explain the process, but there's have been some dates and notes inserted into it that are specific to this project. First step in the process is to release a notice of preparation, or as it's shown here, NOP, which is notifying the public that the city is going to be preparing, in this case, an environmental impact report, or EIR. And that notice of preparation was published in November 18th, 2020, so quite a while ago now, as you already know. And it let the public and other agencies know that the city is going to be preparing an environmental impact report for this project, and asked for input on specifically the any suggestions for what should be covered in the EIR, is known as the scope. Not on the project itself, but on what should be covered in the EIR or in the CEQA process. So there's a public comment period for that notice in which the city took comments on that subject. And the close of that comment period was December 30th, 2020. So public and other agencies had a little over a month to provide comment on what should be in the EIR. So that was part of the scoping process. During the scoping process, there was also a public meeting at which there's, I believe Kaiser presented on the general plan update process, but we also described this CEQA process and what we would be doing as our part in the whole overall process. So after that, we took that feedback or any input from the public and other agencies on what should be in the EIR, but also wrote the EIR according to the CEQA guidelines, which are state guidelines on laying out in quite a bit of detail all the issues that need to be covered in any CEQA document, in this case, the EIR. So we prepared the draft EIR, and that was done concurrently with the general plan update. And once we were ready to release the draft EIR to the public, there's another notice released. That's the NOA shown here, which stands for Notice of Availability. So we noticed the public and other agencies that the EIR was available and asked for their input on the content and comments on that draft EIR. And the public review and comment period for that for the EIR was from July 26, 2022 until September 8th, 2022. So again, over a month of a chance for everyone to review and understand and comment on the document or ask questions about it. So we, after that, we prepared responses to those comments. And the responses to comments, there was some delay. There was also some delay with the general plan update process in general, but we prepared those in the first quarter of 2023. And now we're in the certification process here in the fourth quarter, late 2024. And that is when we come to you, and we came to the Planning Commission first, and now we're coming to you to present the project and the EIR to you, and for your consideration whether or not to approve the plan and certify the EIR, meaning basically approve it, certify that it's adequate under CEQA. And once you've done that, we will prepare and release a notice of determination, which again is notifying the public and agencies that the City Council has made a determination about the EIR. And of course, in that notice, we'll also say what your determination is on the project in general. But specifically, it's about what was your determination on the EIR, and once that's approved, and if you approve the project, then that will be the end of our involvement. I mean, there will be, you do, I understand, have a second reading or another meeting scheduled to do a second reading of your approvals or your determination for this project. So I'll be available for that hearing as well. But yes, so we're here at the public hearing, and that's the process. But I'll move on to describe a little bit more what the actual contents of the EIR are, and what we found in the EIR. So one of the main purposes of the CEQA process is to identify and share with you and the public what potential environmental effects might result from a proposed action, in this case, the general plan update and all the other aspects of it that Kaiser discussed. And we found that there were some potentially significant environmental impacts, but they were but these ones were significant but mitigable. And mitigable meaning that we identified mitigation measures for those impacts that could reduce the impact to a less than significant level, below whatever threshold we identified in the EIR, the applicable threshold for that particular impact. So this means that we identified mitigation measures for biological resources, cultural resources, and tribal cultural resources, geology and soils, and noise. And if you have questions about what those specific impacts were, I can answer those. You can ask me and I can get into more detail about them, specific impacts. But then there were also significant and unavoidable impacts in two areas. And unavoidable meaning that they could not be mitigated, or we could not show definitively that they could be reduced to a less than significant level, again, according to the thresholds that we describe in the EIR. And those were in the areas of air quality and cultural resources. And specifically for air quality, in the AQ1, AQ2, AQ3, those are the specific impact discussions in that section of the EIR. So if you go to the EIR, you go to air quality, it'll be impact discussion, AQ1, AQ2, AQ3. But those discussions were about construction and operational emissions that may conflict with or obstruct implementation of the Air District's air quality management plan and result in adverse impacts to local and regional air quality. And we do have mitigation measures for air quality, but we could not, in some cases, show that they would always be reduced to a less than significant level, even with mitigation. And then for cultural resources impacts, more specifically, that is about historic resources. And again, this is kind of a matter of, especially when you're dealing with a policy document like a general plan, it's not proposing a specific development. It's not like a developer coming in and saying, I want to develop this specific thing on this specific property. Here's the site plan. Here's what I'm going to build. This is a policy document, and while it does identify areas of potential future development, it's not proposing specific development projects. So there are some identified historic resources within the community, for example, in the Russian Village area, but there are some others in the community as well. And also, with historic resources in particular, what's identified as historic may change over time. And since this is a long-range document, we can't say 10 or 15 or 20 years from now that there won't be resources, buildings, et cetera, that are identified at a later time that might be identified as historic, in some of those later years that might not be affected by development that would be carried out under this plan. So the EIR also examines potential alternatives to the plan, with a capital P, meaning the general plan update, but all the associated actions as well. At least that's the way we refer to it in the EIR. And including the no project alternative, and that's required under CEQA. We are required to look at a no project alternative, which in this case would mean actually continued implementation of the city's current general plan. Because if you didn't adopt this plan, your current general plan would still be in effect. But we also looked at a reduced growth alternative, which assumed citywide development would be near the low range projections in the market analysis that was done as part of the general plan update. And the table on the slide shows some more of the specifics about the reduced growth alternative, and looked at it in terms of residential units and then square footage of office space, industrial flex space, and also hotel and motel rooms, which match with the how development was described in the general plan update and analyzed in our EIR. Also, we are required to and did examine what might be the environmentally superior alternative. And environmentally superior meaning when looking at all the different potential environmental effects of the plan that were actually examined in the EIR. So we looked at a reduced growth alternative, and that turned out to be, according to the analysis in the EIR, the environmentally superior alternative. And that was because it would reduce growth-related impacts, because there'd be less growth, reduced growth, but it would still retain plan goals and policies that would help achieve project objectives and reduce environmental impacts. However, the reduced growth alternative would still lead to growth and associated environmental impacts. And this growth would on average be more dispersed throughout the community because there would be less growth in the plan's focus areas. And this growth would also still have potentially significant and unavoidable impacts to air quality and historic resources resulting from development carried out under this alternative. And we looked at the alternatives relation to the plan's objectives. So the reduced growth alternative would not achieve the plan objective of attracting and retaining high-wage and high-value enterprises and diversifying and increasing the local tax base, as well as the plan, because it would not attract or create as many jobs, create as much economic growth, or increase the local tax base to the same extent as the growth accommodated by the plan. This alternative would also not help meet the city's RENA allocation as well as the plan. So reduced growth, reduced environmental impacts associated with that growth because there's less of it, but also not achieving the objectives, the general plan objectives as well, for basically the same reason, because of the reduced amount of growth. And the no project alternative, in other words, continuing with their current general plan, would not include the adjustments in land use, beautification, and placemaking included in the plan, would lead to more dispersed development throughout the community, and would therefore not meet the plan's objectives related to those improvements as well as the plan. And that's my slides for tonight, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about the CEQA process or the EIR or environmental impacts of the plan.
Sir, thank you. Let's go to page 33 of your slide, please. The reduced growth alternative compared to the plan. I just would like a brief explanation, if you could, on the, explain the differentials between the plan and then the reduced growth alternative. Why is there 7,580 units and then the 5,325? That's where I'm confused with those explanations.
We used those numbers from the market analysis, which was a separate study that was done as part of the general plan update. And that was at the low end of projected growth according to the market analysis. So we felt like it was reduced growth, but there was also a kind of a logical basis for it because the market study said that would be on the low range of market demand for this area.
So they're projecting a lower, well, with the exception of there is office. That market analysis for Montclair is projecting 5,325 units, not the 7,580.
That was in a low-end projection. And I think maybe Kaiser could address that a little more because the market analysis was done as part of the general plan update, and we used those numbers from it, but he worked more closely with the people who produced the market
And
analysis.
of course, if we lowball it and we meet and exceed those projections, we're still good and everything's fine. That's what I was kind of getting at. Wanted to make sure that was what my understanding of what it was.
Well, again, maybe Kaiser could address it. What do you mean? The
Or Mike.
reduced growth alternative is not the proposed plan.
EIR is the reduced growth alternative. That's what you're basing on that. The impacts and everything. His question
Well,
is,
it's a null.
what happens if the actual was the plan? How does that impact the EIR? I guess that's the question. In terms of mitigation or?
Well, right. The plan numbers, that's what's actually, we're analyzing in the EIR as the project because that's what's actually being proposed. And then the reduced growth alternative numbers are basically a hypothetical, well, what if it wasn't that, what if the plan wasn't proposing as much growth? What if it's proposing less? And then what would some of the potential, how would that relate to the environmental impacts? So that's what I was talking about with basically less growth would reduce some environmental impacts in some ways, but also would not meet some of the plan objectives in terms of economic development and some other things.
I think our
as well.
BBK attorney's going to provide an answer to that question.
And I'll
A
just,
legal question.
thank you, Mayor. Alicia Winterswike with Best and Krieger. So to explain the slide in a little more detail, under CEQA, the lead agency has an obligation to look at alternatives to the proposed project. And those alternatives are supposed to address the significant environmental effects that the EIR identified for the plan itself. So what this slide is saying is that the development type in the plan would result in these total number of dwelling units and square footages for office, industrial, and hotel. And then the reduced growth alternative is one alternative that we looked at in the environmental impact report to try to examine other ways to avoid environmental impacts that the plan itself would have. So this slide doesn't necessarily have bearing on or reflect the implications of the market analysis. This was simply to say, if we look at less development, less growth in our city, here is what the environmental impacts of that reduced growth snapshot would be.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you both.
Okay. All right, so I think we're done with that, and we'll go to the Abu specific plan next.
Thank you.
Am I correct? Okay.
So the Armwood specific plan looks at two areas on either side of the downtown. The vision is to create two new neighborhoods. One on the west side, which is exploring options to along Arrow Highway to allow for mixed uses on Arrow Highway, and then transition back as it meets the residential community, because there's an existing residential community there. So create a better and a much more smoother transition from Arrow into the residential neighborhood using new development. At the same time, taking advantage of the San Antonio Channel and creating a new park site. And I'll show you a rendering that illustrates perhaps one option of how that could play out. On the east side, it takes advantage of the new downtown development that's happening along the west side of Central, and trying to also take advantage of that on the east side. So the parcels that you see on the east side of Central Avenue are mixed-use buildings that take advantage of the synergy coming out of the downtown and the proximity of the Trans Center. But then also looking at Arrow Highway, particularly the parcels that are north along the rail line. Those are parcels that are incredibly long. Some of them are 700 feet long. That's not a very walkable environment. That's not a very conducive environment for anything but for driving around. So as we're looking at creating neighborhoods, and we're also looking at preserving some of the existing industrial uses, the land that you see that is not colored on the east side, that is a lighter ochre, is left in its existing condition. So those are existing warehouse uses. What we are doing is a lighter touch, primarily along the frontage parcels on Central and on parcels north of Arrow, and then look at creating a place, a gathering place, a place that would attract people to face out, to have events organized around that plaza. So this is an illustrative plan showing Arrow Highway, the mixed-use development, and as it gradually comes down in density and intensity as it meets the residential neighborhood with more house-like forms rather than the mixed-use buildings that you see on Arrow, and then a creation of a new park with access along the San Antonio Channel, with perhaps a future bridge that takes over on the east side of the channel perhaps providing access to the basins, as was indicated by one of the planning commissioners in the workshop, as well as the planning commission meeting. And then on the east side, this is the growth that we hope will take place around that central gathering place. 1 or 2 3-story buildings that is a mix of residential as well as uses, a variety of commerce uses that are organized around this central green space with existing development that is around it. There are a lot of parking lots that you see that are underutilized, particularly during the weekend. If you go out on Saturday or Sunday, most of these parking lots are empty. That provides an opportunity to work with the landowner to address some of the safety concerns, but at the same time, see if that space can be reconceptualized for a temporary use, perhaps hold a festival or some kind of market at that location. The Ahmed specific plan, the Arrow Highway Mixed Use District specific plan is also has a code in it, and that code is a form-based code which builds off of the form-based codes that you've already adopted for the areas north for Montclair Place and North Montclair area. The code primarily looks at context and it promotes context-sensitive development. So for example, if you are on the corridor, which is one district within the Ahmed, it has a different set of standards. But as you turn the corner and you go into the residential neighborhood or the existing warehouse, depending on your context, the codes, the standards change. So it's a much more graceful and a much more contextual way of development regulations. And it also incorporates objective design standards as part of this exercise, which is now required as part of your housing element. Your housing element requires the city to have objective standards in place and to review projects based on that objective standards with streamlined development, which is again offered by this code. I'll move on to the corridors code. As you recall, the corridors code is primarily addressing those areas that are not otherwise covered by a specific plan in the city. With the exception of Holt specific plan, you have Holt specific plan that this corridor code would replace. And I believe there's another specific plan in the area. But these are incredibly old, outdated specific plans that are no longer relevant. So it replaces and updates the standards there. But as Michael mentioned earlier, all of the existing land uses, all of the existing rights that people have on these parcels are preserved. We're just offering them more options for growth, for example, if they're along the corridor. More options for mobility, more options for placemaking, for quality of life type development. There are 4 different districts that the code has called out. The area in the red is primarily the commerce mixed-use area. These are large format establishments that you have within your city, the Costco development and the car lots, but also the intersections of key streets within your city, which is Holt and Central Avenue. And then the industrial uses along Holt and Mission are called out and preserved. The district around Holt is the neighborhood edge district, which allows for mixed-use development. It allows for residential, but also allows for commerce and retail uses. And then the adjacent district is the neighborhood residential, which again provides a buffer between the residential neighborhood and the corridor development that you have. So these are the 4 districts within the corridors code. And as I mentioned again, the standards are very contextual. If you look at the diagram on the upper right-hand corner, it shows you how it promotes contextual development by encouraging the intensity, the bulk of the mass to be located along the corridors. And then as you meet the residential neighborhood the existing residential neighborhood. You go down in your building mass. So you can add a story on the corridor, but as long as you take off a story as you meet the residential neighborhood. And this you can do in a form-based code. The corridors code also has some design guidelines, and these are objective design guidelines that talk about mixed uses, that talk about different types of uses and the different types of frontages that are necessary for different types of uses. For example, a frontage for a commercial establishment may be flushed with the sidewalk, but that same flushed environment for residential prevents privacy, allows people to steep in. So you want to elevate the plinth of that home. So the different design elements of those items are called out. So these are, again, very few standards that are important that preserve the context and that preserve the land uses and are tied to the land uses that are being proposed. So again, I'll stop there and I'll invite Erica to present the climate action plan. We'll be all back to answer any questions you may have.
Hello, thank you. I will would you like me to share my screen to be able to scroll through the slides or move through it on your side?
Erica, if you say next, I'll move the slide.
Oh, okay, great. Excellent, thank you. So during this process, we also prepared the climate action plan. This allowed for the information that was being prepared in the general plan as well as the housing element to be brought into the climate action plan, ensuring that this document was in sync with these other planning documents that are being created, as well as this allowed from some synergy where policies and such that we'll talk about in a minute that came through in the climate action plan were brought in as policies for the general plan. Next slide, please. So a climate action plan is really a long-range planning document that sets the city up to align with the state's goals for greenhouse gas emission reductions, or their climate goals that they have, as well as adaptation goals. So the climate action plan includes a series of some key pieces. This includes a greenhouse gas inventory of baseline emissions. This just establishes what at a baseline for Montclair, the 2017 year was used to determine what were the baseline emissions occurring in this year. Those emissions were then forecasted out into the future, both just as business as usual, meaning that if activities were to continue as exactly as they did in 2017, what would emissions look like? Taking into account what's the anticipated growth based off the general plan and the housing element, as well as having another forecast that's called the adjusted forecast. This takes into account any legislative actions that are coming down from the state that would occur without the city needing to do any additional local action. So this includes things such as Senate Bill 100, which is driving the emission factor of electricity down, but requires no additional action by the local city. After these forecasts are developed, then a target was set. The purpose of a climate action plan is really to align with the state's goals. So the targets are set in alignment with those goals. This includes Senate Bill 32, which establishes a goal of 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below the 1990 levels by 2030, as well as AB 1279, which sets a goal for carbon neutrality by 2045. Based off of those targets and where the gap sits between the adjusted forecast and the target for the city, a series of measures or strategies are developed to then reduce emissions, aligning that with what the policies are in the general plan and from community feedback. Next slide. So as I mentioned, these are the key climate action or climate goals of the state. Senate Bill 32, that is the key one that working towards for 2030, and then a series of other state level legislation that's feeding into the climate action plan and driving climate policy throughout the state. While a climate action plan is not mandated, the state recognizes that they need cities to do their fair share of greenhouse gas emission reductions or their own climate action for the state to be able to reach their climate action goals. With this, the state has considered different benefits of kind of a climate action plan that is aligned with the city or with the state. So, for example, climate action plans that meet the different CEQA guidelines established for a qualified greenhouse gas reduction plan can then streamline development projects from the climate action plan if adopted into the city for certain developments rather than needing to do CEQA each individual time. So that provides an added benefit of a climate action plan. But as I said, cities are not mandated to adopt a climate action plan. Next slide, please. So the next few slides will just quickly go over the results and high-level results and key findings. So for the greenhouse gas inventory, this was again prepared for the 2017 baseline in Montclair. The distribution, you see that nearly 70% of emissions are resulting from transportation. This includes on-road vehicles, and it's focused on what are the vehicles that are occurring within the boundary of Montclair, as well as some of those that are exiting the boundary or re-entering the boundary, but it excludes any vehicle travel that would be just crossing through Montclair and is not actually stopping in the city. So for example, any of the transportation that's occurring on the freeway that's just passing through, that's not getting included at this point. This sector also includes any emissions from transit. The second largest sector of emissions is energy. This includes that energy of electricity and natural gas that's being used in buildings, both in residences and businesses. So based off of this, although this was done in 2017, the trends stay relatively similar moving into the future, where you still have transportation taking over the largest portion of the greenhouse gas emissions profile. Next slide, please. So based off of what that profile looks like, measures and strategies were then developed to target the most significant sectors. So for example, with transportation making about 70% of the emissions for the community, there was a focus in the climate action plan to really look towards increasing the use of public transit, recognizing that Montclair has several transit projects en route or occurring within the city. Also looking towards active transportation, aligning with some of the goals of the general plan, and then looking towards increasing the adoption of alternative fuel vehicles and providing the infrastructure and access to those vehicles and alternative fuel to help reduce emissions there. Also measures, other key measures include those in the energy sector, such as joining a Clean Power Alliance. This would just reduce emissions from electricity to near zero faster than SB 100. So can help achieve that 2030 goal, focusing on electrifying new construction and aligning with those CEC building codes, and then improving building energy efficiency in existing buildings to continue to reduce that energy load. And then some of the other measures and strategies that filled out are those focused on waste, aligning with SB 1383, which is a mandated requirement to reduce organics being sent to the landfill, and as well as reducing emissions associated with water consumption just by additional water conservation. Next slide, please. So this graph shows an example of the different forecasts that we're discussing. So the black line up above, that's a business as usual forecast. That's essentially going from the 2017 baseline year and projecting out emissions as if beyond population growth and housing growth, that the actual activity levels don't change or the emission factors don't change. And then the orange bar is the adjusted emissions forecast. This takes into account still the population growth, but also any of that state legislation that would be anticipated to be reducing emissions without any local action. And then the purple line on the bottom, that's the emissions target that would align the city of Montclair with the state's goals, both the 2030 goal of that 40% below 1990 levels in the next 6 years, and as well as the carbon neutrality goal by 2045. The gap, or kind of that checkered area that's in between that orange bar and the purple bar, is the amount of emissions that the cap is designed to reduce through implementation of those specific strategies and measures that we just talked about. So the cap is lined up that with full implementation of these measures, the city of Montclair would reach the 2030 goal. It would not necessarily reach the 2045 goal, but that is to be expected as technology continues to progress and as the state continues to adopt and alter legislation that's in place. We'll see a change in what is the actual amount of emissions that the city would need to reduce to reach a 2045 goal. But the focus of this cap is really reaching that 2030 goal, which with full implementation, it will reach. Next slide, please. In addition to the focus on climate action mitigation and greenhouse gas reduction, there's also a number of different co-benefits that come along with these strategies. For example, improvement in air quality with that reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and a lot of the focus on the transportation sector. This not only looks at greenhouse gas emissions, but it also reduces emissions from those vehicles that can improve air quality. This also has the benefit of public health improvements with a focus on developing out a system to encourage active transportation that can increase overall public health. Also, with the different systems of bringing in energy changes or new infrastructure to address some of the policies in the climate action plan, there's the opportunities for additional job growth or green job growth. And then, of course, there's resource efficiency, just by reducing the level of resources needed by being more efficient. And then the potential to increase biodiversity in the areas that are kind of greened or addressing more of kind of the carbon sequestration point. I think with that, that is the last slide of this deck before we move on. But I'm happy to answer any questions or at the end of this, and will be available throughout tonight and the following meetings.
I think Councilmember Lopez got a question.
Yes, didn't get your name, ma'am.
Sorry, Erica from
Erica.
Rincon Consultants.
Thank you. Page 48 of your slide.
Yes.
I'm trying, it's hard for me to understand how we can try to meet a 4% reduction in emissions regarding waste when the decomposition of food, and I believe that's what we're addressing, is the new requirement to recycle food products or food scraps. Those pieces of those items do not decompose here in the city because they're picked up weekly. How is it that we would meet that goal when those items get picked up weekly and are processed in another location? Because there's no landfill or decomposition site within the city. I'm just trying to figure out how is that 4% emissions reduction going to be addressed and met?
One thing that I'll clarify, so the waste emissions that are in the inventory and in the forecast, those are associated with community activities. So although the community's waste goes outside of the community to a landfill that is outside of the community is generating those emissions by generating that waste. The particular measures with the focus on meeting SB 1383 is really focused on the diversion of that organic waste from the landfill. And so that's a focus on the city's contractor or local waste hauler, and working in those contracts and making sure that that they're in alignment with SB 1383, and they're abiding by that legislation, which really means just reducing out the level of organic waste that ultimately makes it into the community members' trash cans and going to the landfill.
So we
And this
would,
can be done, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I interrupted you. You go ahead.
I was just going to say that this can be done. There's a number of, through SB 1383, there's a number of different ways that waste diversion works. Things like food banks are one example of it, as well as local composting. And then a lot of times local waste haulers also have, whether it's they're breaking out to have different receptacles for organic waste versus non-organic waste. At that level, or if once they take it to the sorting facility, they're then responsible for it. But a lot of times in their contracts, you can build out that contract language to ensure that they're meeting the requirements of SB 1383, which then in turn means that the community would be meeting those requirements and be able to reduce these emissions.
So we'd basically be dependent on the annual reports from Burtec as to the amount of organic waste our residents hand over to them.
Vertex, our
Yes.
solid waste provider.
Okay. No, I appreciate that explanation. I thought there was another question. Oh, so on page 17, is that what it is on? The numbers are there's a double print on my page. So it's the round pie chart. I just wanted clarification. It's not 17, I'm sorry.
Page 47.
That's what 47, there you go.
Page 47, key
So,
findings.
so the pie chart is reflective of Montclair's actual numbers
No, it's state.
based off of 2017?
Yes, yes. So this is the values that are in the table are the actual calculated numbers, and then the pie chart just represents what that looked like in 2017. This was all forecasted out into the future using 2017 as a baseline. Until another inventory is prepared for the city of Montclair, we won't know exactly how much this has changed, but given what the activity levels are, this would still be really what the trend would continue to look like. Maybe with a little fluctuation, say if an inventory was done this year, there might be a little fluctuation, probably a drop in energy. Transportation would still make up a vast majority of it.
And I'm assuming with respect to water, that just, you guys contacted, or whoever did the emissions summary report, contacted Monte Vista Water District to get Montclair's allocation or Montclair's statistics regarding that?
Correct.
Okay.
Both the water and the wastewater are based off of an allocation of the actual wastewater treater or the water provider, and then allocating those emissions to Montclair. So it's not all of what that water provider or wastewater treater treats. It's just the portion of Montclair.
Well, thank you. I appreciate both explanations to my questions and your time on this. Thank you.
Councilman Rue.
Thank you.
Turn that off. The question I have is along the same lines, and it's on water. You have in here to reduce water consumption. What are your plans to do that?
So in the climate action plan, the way that it is set up, there are high-level measures or strategies that kind of set a target of reduction. So this would be, for example, reduce per capita water consumption. And then there's a series of different actions, and there's many actions. So for example, some of the actions include things like drought-tolerant landscapes and encouraging drought-tolerant landscapes, or where it's underneath the municipality's control, transitioning over to drought-tolerant landscapes, requiring certain water efficiency measures in building codes as those buildings are getting either renovated or new buildings are being built. And so that overall the amount of consumption of water will reduce on a per capita basis. But there's a large list of different ways to meet that.
Well, in looking at this, I concur about drought-tolerant landscaping. In fact, if you drive through the city, I want to highlight a business, Klaus & Sons Plumbing, south side of Arrow 5200 block. Tremendous job of drought-tolerant landscaping. It's absolutely beautiful. We need more of that, not less. Yet in these plans, all of them together, when I look at this, it seems to be an awful lot of lush green landscaping and all of that, which is just the opposite of what we need. And what I'll hear is, well, we'll use recycled water. No, we need recycled water for other things. There seems to be a few in this city or on this council who really push environmentally, but when it comes to drought tolerant, they're silent. And I think we need to emphasize all new development should be drought tolerant, period, end of subject. We shouldn't worry about whether somebody drives through the city and sees lush tropical green landscaping. What we need is drought tolerant to reduce consumption. Drought is going to be a permanent part of California. We know that. We've seen it. And we need to include those type of measures in all that we do. It is irresponsible of us to think we can use as much water as we want or just, well, we'll reduce it a little bit, let somebody else take the brunt of it. I can point to a community in the desert, Indian Wells, fairly affluent community. They have a lot of drought tolerant. So I think we need to look more in that direction, and that's the only way we're going to get this done. It's not going to happen by having all these lush green spaces around so people can bicycle, if they can afford a bicycle, or if they have one or so desire to use it, in lush green landscaping. We need to have drought tolerant. People need to understand that we need to move to the future. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's all yours. Next.
Mayor, I believe there's a discussion about segmentation before we get into the land use and the housing element portion, so. I'm sorry. There are two other items that we need to cover, but I think there's a discussion on procedures for considering components of application segmentation process.
Yes.
Before we can talk about land use and
Okay,
housing
that's where
element.
we at now, okay.
Okay.
Then Diane, well, let's wait for Ben to come in first.
Okay.
I think that'll be important, so we'll take another break.
Right.
We'll wait for Councilman Lopez. Okay, I think all members are present again, and we will resume the meeting. Diane, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to discuss a little bit about the general conflict of interest rules and kind of refresh everyone's memory. And it specifically relates to what we're going to be discussing or taking action on this evening. So as you know, public officials are prohibited from making or attempting to make or attempting to influence a government decision in which they know or have reason to know that they have a disqualifying financial interest. So I think you all know that. So under the current FPPC rules, there's a presumption that decisions involving property within 500 feet of an official's property will have a material financial impact on the official's interests. So it's a presumption that there is a conflict. If it's over 1,000 feet from the official's property, there is a presumption that it is not or will not have a material impact. If it's between 500 and 1,000, whether the impact is material depends upon an analysis, various factors, the development potential for the property, income producing potential, and a host of other factors. That type of analysis is complicated and time consuming, and we are recognizing that if a property is located, the decision is within 1,000 feet of the official's property, that it's more than likely that there's going to be a conflict. That's the case. Now, there is a public generally exemption if an action that's before the council involves a significant segment of the population, then the official, the council member tonight, does not have to recuse themselves. And an example of this would be a general plan update like we're having, the majority of the general plan update applies to all the residents of the city, all property within the city, and therefore it's not specific to your particular property, and that doesn't create a disqualifying event. In the case before us this evening, there are a couple of components, though, of the land use plan update that affect a smaller area of land, not the entire city. For example, the Ahmed, the Arrow Highway Mixed Use District specific plan affects approximately 165 acres in the city. So is that significant? Well, under the rules, a significant segment is an amount that's at least 25% of the land in the city. Well, 165 acres is not 25, it's less than 25%. So we can't use the public generally exemption to allow everyone to vote on that. So those of you who are within 1,000 feet of these particular projects will have a conflict or a potential conflict. So we have analyzed it, staff has looked at it and determined that certain ones of you have certain conflicts. So the city is allowed to break some of these decisions down into segments. It's called segmentation. So where we can kind of pull some of that out so that the member who has a conflict just disqualifies himself or herself from that particular action, but they can still vote on related actions to that matter where they do not have a disqualifying conflict. So our goal here is to have the 5 of you vote on as much of this as we are able to do. So it's kind of been broken down into components, and we're going to go through them kind of one at a time, look at the conflicts, and then those of you with conflicts will have to recuse yourself. Now, the process for recusing is kind of a 3-step process. First, you identify the financial interest that's causing you to have the conflict. For example, you would say, I have a potential financial conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act, given the proximity of my personal residence to the boundaries of the Ahmed or to the boundaries of the corridor code or whatever the specific item is that we are addressing. And then then you announce, as a result of that, I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. That includes not voting on it, not discussing it, and in fact, then you are required to leave the dais, leave the room, and go back into the conference room until the matter is concluded. Now, on some of these matters, there's going to be 3 and possibly 4 of you that have conflicts. So the rules, we have to have 3 members vote, right? All of these actions require 3 votes for passage. They also require 3 members to vote on them. So what do we do if we have 3 or 4 of you who have conflicts? What we do, the technical name given to it is the rule of necessity. So what we do is we randomly select the required number of you that's necessary to get to 3 by drawing straws. That's how we're going to do it tonight. We draw straws. So I have straws, and a couple of them say vote at the end, and others don't say anything. So we will randomly, I'll mix them up, hold them randomly, and then whoever's got the conflict will draw from the straws. And then the one who gets the straw, or the 2 that get the straws that say they can vote, are re-qualified back and then make up the 3, and then the others are required to leave the room. So we're just going to go through it kind of one at a time. We'll identify the conflicts as we address each item on the agenda. And if you have
Okay.
any questions, of course, you can ask.
This would be an opportunity to ask the attorney any questions on this item. Everybody's good on that? Okay, I still have to do the public hearing, so the public hearing is open, but I'm going to this time ask if there's any members of the public that wish to address the city council. And do you have anybody in the council? No?
I don't have any
I don't have
cards.
nobody? Okay, so then we will now go to number 3, what's on the list, staff report discussion of the general plan land use map changes and related components with EIR. So I believe at this time, obviously, I believe the city attorney has notified those folks who may have a conflict of interest in this item. So I'm going to state here, I have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act related to the general plan land use map changes given to the proximity of my mother's property at 5650 Hope Boulevard, which is held by a trustee. I'm the trustor and the beneficiary of that trust deed. So I will have a conflict. Any other members?
Yes. I too have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act relating to the general plan land use map changes given the proximity of my personal residence to those involved areas. As a result, I will have to recuse myself from this matter.
Mr. Mayor, I too have a potential conflict regarding my personal residence, and so I will recuse myself from this matter.
Madam, Mr. Mayor and Madam City Attorney, question. And we discussed this privately, but in the mayor's statement of recusal, it is not that he owns property, but a family member owns property, which is the same common denominator with me. He's listed in a trust. I am not listed in a trust. I'm not listed in a will. And I've been vacillating about this since we've last talked. I don't have any financial interests at all and will not benefit negatively or beneficially from any of these actions. So I know that there you stated there was a presumption based upon the 500-foot rule, and you stated that is state mandated. Am I correct?
Correct. That's FPPC has indicated that's part of their standards now, that there is a presumption of a conflict if you're within 500 feet.
I'd like to state for the record that I own no property 500 feet from the affected area regarding the corridor, general plan land use map proposal, nor am I on any deed, will, trust of any kind with respect to any family member that I live with. But that said, even though I disagree with this strongly, that said, I am within the 500 feet parameter of an affected zone change, and I will reluctantly recuse myself.
Okay, so I think that's 4 members recuse themselves, so Diane?
Right, so now
Okay.
we have to draw straws and see which 2 get qualified back.
How do we do this? Let's get it done. We don't need theatrics.
It's not theatrics, we just got to go through.
No, I'm saying, let's just get it done.
Whoever loses buys dinner.
Buys drinks. We're past that.
Should I buy dinner?
Vote, John's got to vote.
Okay.
Ben and Bill.
All right, I guess I have to run this, so I'm looking forward to a little break. All right. Now, alcohol Alcohol, margaritas are, okay. Okay, again, we're on item B3, and this is regarding the general plan land use map changes and related components of the EIR. So I guess we'll take a staff report now.
Mayors, members of the council, this is, the land use map is part of the general plan. It's part of the well-planned community. And as I mentioned earlier, and I'll delve into a little more detail, what it does is it evaluates where growth can occur. And in doing so, it first looks at what the market demand is. What is the market demand that the city can sustain? And it's a range. And then it looks at what is the available land that is available in the city. Vacant parcels, underutilized parcels. It looks at community preferences. What is the community's appetite for growth and development? In many cases, it may be saying, yeah, we're fine. We want to attract investment in certain areas like a downtown and our corridors. But keep it away from our residential districts. So that's clear policy decision that the council's making. That while there is market demand, we want to maintain our existing residential neighborhoods as is. We want to direct it in certain areas. So all of those go into and weigh into where growth is directed. But we start with an analysis of existing units. You have existing land use analysis, and you have existing 11,200 units in the city. The projected demand by the market study was a higher range of 5,300 units to, a lower range of 5,300 to a higher range of 7,580 units. And we chose a number of 7,600 units to be allocated. The market study determined existing 103 rooms. There was a projected demand for 300 additional rooms, primarily along the 10 freeway. So we identified that and we accommodated that within the land use plan. The office use was a two-part. The office and industrial flex was analyzed separately. The existing uses are 350 square feet. The projected demand, the higher range was 600 square feet. In the industrial flex, you have existing of 4.3 million square feet of industrial flex building, and the projected demand was a little under 2 million, additional 2 million square feet of residential, of industrial flex buildings. And we combined both of them, office and industrial flex, into one category, and we projected a growth of 1.15 million square feet additional office/industrial flex use spaces within the city. And in retail, you already have 4.6 million square feet, which is far, 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 far greater than many of the cities around you. And that's primarily because you have a mall within your city. So we're not projecting any more. There may be modest demand for new spaces, particularly looking at your corridors and looking at some of the underperforming retail on the corridor that might be converted into mixed uses. But for the most part, the market's not going to support any additional higher number of retail spaces. So with that, then the question is saying, okay, this is what the market supposes based on existing available land. And accommodates community preferences, but where is it going to be? And that's essentially the map that you see. Primarily, most of this growth is directed in the Ahmed and the downtown area, majority of it in the downtown, and then the corridors of Central, Holt, and Mission Boulevard. So this is the land use map that you have within your general plan document, and this is the associated zoning map. So what you have here is a land use map, which is a policy framework, and you have a land use zoning map, which is a legal document, which actually dictates what land users can go where. And what we've done here is essentially taken the general plan land uses and made them in conformance. So zoning map, make the zoning map in conformance with your general plan. So it helps in the implementation of the general plan. So besides that, we have gone into the zoning map and fixed certain things. These are what I would call either Scribner's errors or just correct a historic land use. For example, churches are zoned residential. Well, they were never intended to be built as residential. Schools are zoned residential. So we have created a civic land use category and call those uses as civic, recognizing their historic use and recognizing that they're not going to change anytime in the near future. So I think that concludes my presentation on these two items.
Just on the, real fast on the
Yes, sir.
commercial component where there's no growth. I imagine a lot of that's reimagining the commercial.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't catch
On
that.
the retail component, excuse me, the
Yes.
4.6 million, which is not growing. I assume in the future that gets reimagined, I hate the word redevelopment, but it just becomes,
Precisely.
it changes.
Yeah,
The
it's a
retail,
zero-sum
you get
game,
different
yes.
retail.
Some of that becomes mixed use, some of that becomes
Yeah.
residential,
Yeah.
some of that becomes office, commercial, perhaps even hotel.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. Do we need to do the housing element on this, or this is it? We stop now? We stop here, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, any questions from council? If not, let's get a preliminary vote on the land use map. Can I get a motion? I'll move for the preliminary vote on the land use map. Can I get a second?
Second.
And related EIR components. Second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Can we get a vote, please? Electronic vote? President? Are we having problems? We'll do it by voice. What'd you do by, oh, here it is. Okay. As you know, the other members are not present, so. Okay.
I don't know why it shows abstain.
All right, so,
They should both be
so,
absent.
it's adopted 3-0 with Councilmember Rue and Councilmember Lopez recused themselves. All right, now we'll go on to the fourth component here, and I think we bring back everybody, if I'm correct? Yes. Okay. You guys having a good time back there? You guys found the margaritas or the wines back there?
No, it's
Are there margaritas back there? Oh, you found an A&W, okay.
Well, that's what the can says.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now we're on component number 4, which is the final consideration of Cedarwood Resolution, General Plan Update Resolution, which includes the housing element, the Climate Action Plan Resolution. And so who wants to do this here?
Wait,
Oh,
wait a sec. I think
Oh.
we need to go to C above that.
oh, C.
Discussion of the
I'm
housing
sorry,
element.
yes, there is a C here. This is discussion of housing element, opportunity sites, and related components.
Yes, and then we'll hear from Councilmember Rue.
Yes, I have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act relating to the housing element opportunity sites, given the proximity of my personal residence to those involved areas. As a result, I will recuse myself from this matter.
Okay. Sorry, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, so now we'll get the staff, go ahead, staff report, I guess, the housing element.
Mayor, members of the council, I'd like to invite Sarah Walker from National Core. She's online. She'll make the presentation on the housing element.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to join you tonight. My name is Sarah Walker, and I am a project manager with National Community Renaissance, and I prepared the city's 2021 to 2028 housing element. The housing element update was initiated in 2020, and the city did receive their letter of substantial compliance from the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development on July 27th of 2022. Next slide. So just as a quick refresher, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, for the city of Montclair for the 2021 to 2029 planning period is 2,593 units. And this included 1,081 units for low and very low income unit households, 399 for moderate income, and just over 1,100 units for above moderate income households. Next slide. So to meet the city's RHNA, we established a housing plan that included 4 different distinct goals. The first goal identified was to improve and conserve the city's housing stock. And underneath this goal, we included a variety of programs that included things like code enforcement and housing rehabilitation programs. The second goal focused on removing and mitigating constraints to the improvement or development of housing in the city, which included things like the objective design standards that Kaiser was mentioning earlier, as well as reviewing the zoning code for consistency with state law. The third goal was to provide a variety of housing types to accommodate special needs groups, as well as different economic segments of the city. So this included programs such as encouraging lot consolidations for larger multifamily developments, rezoning to accommodate the RHNA, as well as an inclusionary housing ordinance. And finally, the fourth goal was to provide equal housing opportunities and to affirmatively further fair housing for all residents, including those with special needs. So in addition to the housing plan, city staff was also required to identify land sufficient to facilitate the development of housing at a variety of income levels, as was just shown on that table, that aligns with their 2021 to 29 RHNA. So ultimately, we identified 25 opportunity areas that could be developed or redeveloped with higher density residential uses. So as you can see, many of the sites are located along Holt Boulevard, Mission Boulevard, and in the northern section of the city, particularly around Montclair Place and the Montclair Trans Center. So in total, we ended up identifying roughly 146 acres that can accommodate over 4,000 new units. And so this total was then distributed amongst the RHNA income categories. Next slide. So this table shows by income category how the city will accommodate the RHNA allocation. We first looked at potential credits, so how we could reduce the RHNA based on projects that may be in the city's development pipeline already. So these were shown in that second line as credits towards the RHNA. We then also estimated the number of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, that are likely to occur during the planning period, and this was assumed to be roughly 10 units annually based on historic patterns. We then included the number of units that could be accommodated through the land inventory that we just looked at. And so this, again, totaled 4,196 units. So in the bottom row, you're seeing that the city does have a surplus and that the city is more than able to accommodate the RHNA allocation. Now it's a surplus of sites in the instance that one of these sites does not get built with the units that were allocated to it. Next slide. So the next steps for the housing element are a little bit unique from the other general plan elements. Once the element is and the rezonings tied to implementation are adopted, we will submit this document and the related ordinances and resolutions back up to HCD for a final certification review. And this can take up to 90 days, and that, assuming that nothing has changed in the document, we should receive our compliance letter. So I will continue to work with staff on the final submittal, and I really have appreciated being part of the team working to further housing opportunities in the city of Montclair. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for a consultant?
Yeah, a quick question, please.
Go ahead.
Your name again, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Sarah Walker.
Ms. Walker, Sarah. I am getting someplace with this question. Your company, National Community Renaissance. Did you in the past have as a client the city of Paris in Riverside County?
We did.
Okay. I bring that up because in the first version of the housing element draft that I was given back in October, and then the one that I was given last week, I noticed that on several pages, and this is minor, but it did stand out to me. On pages, I believe, 197, 198, and a little bit thereafter, the city of Montclair is referred to as the city of Paris in its boundaries. And I don't know, I just attribute it to maybe quick and sloppy work. And perhaps you use a template to produce the report, but obviously it wasn't double checked. And I wanted to bring that to your attention. It stood out. I know it doesn't address the actual teeth of the report, but something important like this, given the amount of money that the city has paid for this report, I believe we are entitled to have our name listed as the city boundary for each of the graphs that you demonstrate in your report. That's all I wanted to bring to your attention, just so that way it doesn't happen again to another future client. But other than that, that was my only statement that I wanted to bring to your attention.
Okay, no other questions on this? Okay, I want to move that we preliminary approve the housing element plan as presented by staff, and of course, some minor changes to the plan as outlined by Councilmember Lopez. Have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. Let's do electronic vote. Okay, that's adopted 4-0 with Councilmember Rue recusing himself, and we'll bring Councilmember Rue. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rue is back in the room. So this is the final consideration of secret resolution, general plan update resolution, including the housing element, climate action plan resolution. No discussion on the land use map or housing element sites or related components of the IRA, everyone participates in this case. So I understand we will have a presentation, and we will redo the presentation starting from page 1 to page 58. Am I correct? Did I get everybody's attention there? I just want to make sure. All right, I was just joking.
You got mine.
All right, any questions by council to staff at this time? No questions? No questions?
On everything?
On the final consideration, the secret resolution, the general plan update resolution, including the housing element and the climate action plan resolution, but you cannot talk about the land use map or the housing element sites. Am I correct, Diane?
Yes, and if I might direct your attention to page 19 of the agenda, it's got the listed resolution numbers and such.
Okay, page
So-
19
Yes,
of the agenda, which will be the first
so you'd be looking at A, B, and C.
B and C. So you want those red, all that red?
We're voting on item C.
It would be A, B, and C.
Okay.
Okay.
Individually, I
Any
believe.
questions at this time?
Individually?
I would suggest individually.
Okay, thank you. I prefer that on item C.
Okay, any questions at this time? If not, I'm going to ask any more members of the public who wish to address the city council this time. If not, then we're going to close the public hearing. And so at this time now, we will have entertained a final vote. I'll just go ahead and make it this easy. I'll move for adoption of resolution number 24-3463, which is A in the staff report recommendation. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Let's go ahead and vote.
Point of order, real quickly.
Go ahead.
Madam City Attorney, this particular resolution does not include the general plan land use map? Or,
No, that would be in the next one.
okay,
In
thank you.
B. Thank you.
I have an issue. And it is a sticking point for me. As I brought up at the October 3rd meeting, and correct me if I'm out of place here with respect to the item and if it not being germane to the appropriate item, but the health in Montclair component of the plan, at the October 3rd meeting, I had raised some concern.
What page are you referring to?
This would be, these pages are huge. Starting on page 123, in the big, the maroon Montclair plan. Yes, that's where it starts. I'm trying to find the exact page here. It is in the healthy Montclair section. Oh, boy, where the heck is it? And it is actually on page 133, sorry. 133, Bill. I had expressed some reservations regarding the inclusion of the language that says adopt land use regulations to limit unhealthy food outlet density, examples fast food, liquor, and convenience stores. And then it continues, encourages equitable distribution of healthy food, retail, and dining options in all commercial areas of the city, restricts approval of new unhealthy food outlets in the areas with an existing high concentration of such stores, and prioritizes the development of healthy food outlets in those areas. So, I watched the tape back from that particular meeting, and at the 1 hour, 18-minute mark, embarks and starts the discussion on this. And I had asked, well, the mayor had asked if I would prefer to have the whole piece removed, and I did say yes. And of course, there were discussions from planning commissioners that stated it should be left in. In that whole back and forth, it was stated at the mayor's request, and I agreed, at the 1 hour, 34-minute mark, that we remodify the language to specifically reflect the saturation issue and alcohol establishment issues, and that we rework the language, and both you, sir, and the city manager said we would. In this document, it hasn't changed. So someone dropped the ball, and I didn't just make those comments to hear myself speak and spew air. I wanted some changes. And because it's not going to happen, I'm very much against this plan. Because if I can't get a minimal change to address that, what else can I not get with respect to this whole plan? I will say again, and it was actually stated, these inclusion of these points were not at the behest of you and your company. They were at the behest of, you claimed, residents that made those requests, and we put in those requests. I really doubt one resident, maybe even 5, but I doubt one said, let's restrict the approvals of new unhealthy food outlets in areas with an existing high concentration of such stores. It really bothers me that this is in the plan. Now, I will take to what you said at the very beginning, sir, about dovetailing or marking an area where you have a reservation and look at the full breadth of the plan. I've done that as well. But this still seriously bugs me because, and I know we've been told this is only a guidance, it can be changed later, but it can't be changed quickly.
Okay, so what's, well,
So
is that the only thing you have?
yes, that
That's the only thing on
this is the
side?
main thing that is a sticking
Anything
point
else
for
in
me.
that doc? Anything else, or that's the only thing you're?
Well, let me, I would like,
I'm gonna
this is,
recognize Councilman Lopez first.
this is not a issue with respect to what I just brought up. This is more of a requesting information. On page 125, it is the source that you list for those causes of deaths in Montclair. You list the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health. I would like to see if I can get a copy, please, of that specific study, because I was blown away that that was our county's stats with respect to Montclair. If I could get those, please, I'd very much appreciate it. Right now, that's my only sticking point, sir.
Okay.
If I might interject
ahead.
for a minute.
Go ahead, Diane.
We were taking up item A, which was the Resolution 24-3463, which is dealing with the EI.
If I was out of line, but,
Yours is on B.
okay.
Okay, so let's
right.
address
Well,
A,
A is basically the EIR, right?
EIR.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about the EIR.
Yes.
So there's a motion on A again, and A is really about the EIR. Any further discussion on the motion regarding approval of A? If not, then let's go ahead and have an electronic vote. All right. Okay, so that is adopted 4-1, with Councilman Root voting no, and that's adoption of resolution number 24-3463. I assume there's no reading. Now we have B. So now we have B, which is adopt resolution 24-3461, adopting the 2020 City of Montclair General Plan, its mandatory optional elements in the general plan land use map. Okay, so I want to recognize Councilmember Rue.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, along the same lines, I expressed my concerns about that whole component. Many of our residents, and I will repeat this, I repeat it to everybody I know, over 20% of our residents are at or below the poverty line. They can't afford restaurants that have $15 and $20 salads. The vast majority of them are struggling. When I mention this, I'm told, well, they can use their EBT or their SNAP benefits. They're not going to use it on $15 and $20 salads. This appeals to a very small number of people. I also went around since then and looked at many restaurants in town. Many of our existing restaurants already have healthy food options. They have gluten-free. They have a lot of salads. They have other things on their menus that would be considered healthy. I don't know how we can decide what is and is not healthy. To me, this is nothing more than an effort to try to gentrify a city, because that's what a few council members want. I'm more concerned about eating establishments for our families who need diners and things of that sort, because that's what they can afford. If you want healthy eating, you can do this. I will remind everybody up here that when we had stores like the 99-cent store that sold fresh fruits and vegetables for a very reasonable price, they didn't like those stores. They considered them as downgrading the city. So I really struggle with this. I too don't know why it's even in here. Yep. We're worried about health. Well, health also means drought-tolerant landscaping and things like that. So I'm really struggling with this one. I too thought what Councilman Lopez had suggested would come back to us. We were told that night, well, we'll have another chance to discuss this. It'll come back. It hasn't. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
Mayor, just real quickly, couple of things. Councilman and Councilman Lopez, we did take your comment to heart, and A 5.1A in the version that was distributed at the workshop reads, adopt land use regulations to limit unhealthy food outlet densities such as fast food, liquor, and convenience store. That has now been remodified in the newer version, and it now reads support rather than adopt land use regulations, because I thought the concern was with adopting regulations, that you wanted market forces. So this is more of a support, more diverse mix of food outlets in the community where residents have easier access to a wider range of healthier choice. So there's no mention of fast food, liquor, or convenience store. Instead, it's suggesting providing access, supporting providing access to a wider choice of healthier options. Might I suggest for your consideration, if this is the only issue that you have, you can cast a motion and see if you have support from your fellow council members to reword this, and we can discuss what that wording would be that would comfort you. But this may, this is easy to fix. Where did we get this? And if this was mentioned several times, council member, in the survey work that we conducted, in the interviews that we conducted, and we held focus group meetings just on the topic of health. There were at least 4 focus group meetings that met and discussed the topic of health, where this issue, access to healthier options, was brought up again and again. So this was something that is a direct product of resident engagement over a period of 6 years, dealing with the direct issue of public health.
Sir, I appreciate you, the wordsmithing on A5.1A. However, A5.1B, number 2, still is problematic for me, because even though you guys claim it's only an advisory stipulation or statement, it restricts approvals of new unhealthy food outlets. So I have a problem with that first part, because who's the determining factor? Who determines what's unhealthy? And then with an existing high concentration of such stores, what's going to happen to existing stores in that area? It's no fault of their own that they exist. Are they going to be pushed out once this is adopted? I have a serious problem with it, because it's not up to us to determine that. We're not doctors, and we're policymakers, but we don't dictate the availability of, we don't dictate what residents should or shouldn't eat. That's up to them.
So I'm going to suggest, why don't we just strike this altogether?
Second.
And then we still have encouraged equitable distribution of healthy foods and retail dining, and we still have prioritized development of healthy foods. So I suggest that we just strike it all together. I think it's a small issue compared to everything else that's in this document. So just a thumbs among the council members here. Sounds like Councilmember Rue agrees with me. How about no? Councilmember Martinez, no. Councilmember Johnson's fine. So I'm going to make a motion that we move to approve. Oh, Diane's over there, so I don't know if Diane's got something to tell me. Well, let's wait for Diane.
When you look at the way this is worded, restricts approvals of new unhealthy food outlets in areas with an existing high concentration of such stores.
You know, I'm
Defining unhealthy, Fleming's
I
and
think
Ruth's Chris sell high-calorie steaks.
Councilmember Rue, we're done with this now.
Okay.
I got a question, for City Attorney Robbins. Any issues by striking it?
No, you can,
Okay.
you
Then,
can
I'm gonna make-
modify the language, certainly.
I move to adopt Resolution 24-3461, adopting the 2020 City of Montclair General Plan, and we're going to strike, A51B 2 on page 133. That's striked. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. Let's get the electronic vote. That's adopted 5-0. Okay, we're not quite done yet. Now we have to do the AMUD specific plan ordinance, which is number 5. And I believe Councilmember Rue.
Mr. Mayor?
Did I jump something?
You did. The Climate Action Plan, number C.
Oh,
Letter
you're
C.
right. I
Letter C.
apologize. Okay, I move, if there's no further questions on this, any questions on this? I move for adoption of resolution number 24-3462, which is adoption of the Climate Action Plan.
Second.
I got a second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. We'll do electronic vote. Councilmember Rue, you have a comment?
I will be opposing it because it doesn't have enough about drought tolerant in there.
Okay.
Every climate action plan I've seen has that. This one really doesn't. Thank
you. All right. Vote, please. All right. Okay, we'll do all in favor state aye.
Aye.
Aye, I'm sorry.
All in favor, say aye. Or roll call.
Do a roll call. Make it easy, roll call.
Okay, Councilmember Lopez?
No.
Councilmember Martinez? Aye. Councilmember Rue?
Absolutely not.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
And Mayor Dutray?
Yes. So that's
you.
adopted 3-2. Now we go to the AMU. All right, number 5, which I believe Councilmember Rue has a conflict. Go ahead, I will wait.
I just had to find the language. I have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act relating to the Arrow Highway Municipal District-specific plan, given the proximity of my personal residence to those involved areas. As a result, I will recuse myself from this matter.
Okay, any questions on the AMU plan?
I'm fine with it.
No questions? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing related to the AMU plan. And then we will move for approval, move for approval ordinance number 25-1009, just be declared as a first reading, be read by title and number only.
Second.
Can I get a second? Councilmember Lopez seconds. Let's do a electronic vote. You got a yes. Well, I voted yes. That's adopted 4-0 with Councilmember Rue recusing. Now go ahead and read it. City Clerk?
Okay, ordinance number 24-1009, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Montclair repealing the North Montclair specific plan and adopting the Arrow Highway Mixed Use District specific plan, case number 2024-55.
Okay. That's adopted. We'll bring Councilmember Rue back into the room. Okay, so now we're down to the quarters code ordinance, which there's 2 segments of this, and we'll start with one, which is Area 1, the main quarters code segments, which I believe 3 members will have may have a conflict issue. So at this time, if anybody has a conflict issue, there's an opportunity to announce it.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be first out the gate. For the same statement I shared with respect to the general plan use map, I will state for the record, I own no property near the area. I am not on any will or trust, and I would state that I don't benefit at all financially, but having said that, with respect to the 500 feet requirement by the FEPC, I will recuse myself.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, because my personal property is within 1,000 feet of the quarters code, I will recuse myself.
Thank you. Anybody else?
And that I have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act relating to the main segment of the corridors code, given the proximity of my personal residence to those involved areas, so I must recuse myself.
Okay, anybody else? If not, I believe the city attorney will do the drog. Okay, thank you. At this time, I don't think we need a staff report discussion on this. Any questions by staff?
I
If
would
n-
just like to clarify
ahead.
that this is on the main corridors code segment, the main segment.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then we will do the preliminary vote, so I'll move that we adopt Area 1, the main corridors code segment. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Martinez. We can vote. Yes. All right. It's adopted 3-0. Okay, we'll bring the council members in. Okay, we are now number 2, Area 2, which is the Hope Boulevard Corridors Code segment. I'm going to announce I have a potential conflict of interest under the Political Reform Act relating to the Hope Boulevard segment of the Corridors Code, given my mom's business property at 5650 Hope Boulevard and my involvement in a trust deed. As a result, I'm going to recuse myself from this matter. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, it's all yours.
So, City Attorney Robbins, next on the agenda? Or are we done with this section?
Well, we're voting on another segment of the corridors code. So we're just kind of doing just the approval of the Hope Boulevard. It's a small piece of the corridors code.
Okay.
You've already voted on the main part. This is
So
a small
this is
piece.
just a small piece.
So after we do this, then we will bring back the mayor and do the combined corridors code vote.
Okay.
So it's kind of a sub-vote, if you will.
So are there any issues about this issue, or are we prepared to vote? Then can we vote, please?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I move adoption of ordinance number 24-1010, adopting the Montclair Corridors Code, amending portions of Title 10 of the Montclair Municipal Code to be read by title and number only. Did I do that right, Andrea? Thank you.
Except, Councilmember Lopez, we're doing this little piece of just the Hope Boulevard part. It's kind of a sub-part.
Where do I need to stop then?
Yes. So
Boulevard,
just that, and
one
then we'll
section.
bring back the mayor and we'll do the action you just
So-
suggested.
At the end, we'll do the ordinance.
Do I need to rephrase it?
Yeah, just the Area 2 Hope Boulevard Corridors Code segment.
All right, I move what the city clerk just stated per her verbiage.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we vote? Thank you.
Once again, his screen's not working.
My screen.
Oh,
No. Tap it.
did all four of us vote? Okay, so we can bring Mayor Dutray back into the room.
Okay, so now we do the combined corridors code. Any final questions? With no discussions of the map. We will now close the public hearing on the corridors code, and we get a final vote on the corridors code, which I believe will be E in the staff report on page 19.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I have a question, point
Go ahead.
of
Then
order for
it's
the
appropriate
city
for a
attorney.
question then.
On this particular item, the corridors code, I recused myself and out of the room. So go ahead.
Just on the one piece.
Okay, so the
So
entirety of it.
you all can vote on the
Okay.
whole part.
Thank you.
We just can't discuss which is the,
Yes, you can't discuss your
discussion of map.
specific,
Yeah, specific parts of the map. You can't pinpoint properties and change this, change that, so. Okay, so let's, I move to conduct, this is the first reading of adoption of ordinance number 24-1010 as it relates to the Montclair Corridors Code, to be read by number title only, further reading be waived. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. We'll vote electronically. Okay, this is adopted 3-2. So it's adopted as well. And now I think we have a last motion here to set a public hearing to conduct a second reading. Am I correct? Yeah, we have to then move to set a public hearing to conduct a second reading and to consider adoption of ordinance number 24-1009 and 24-1010 on December 16. Can I get a second? Second by Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. I'll vote, please, electronically. Okay, that's adopted 5-0.
Mr. Mayor, if I might make just
Go
a
ahead.
brief statement. I voted to continue this to the second reading on the 16th. My vote at that time might be different, just for some reservations that I have, but we'll see. I have 2 weeks. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Mr. Mayor, I too voted to move this forward to the second reading. And as has been my case in the past, there are times I may vote very differently, but I did it in the sense of democracy to move something forward. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the consent calendar. Anybody on my left want to move an item? No? How about my right?
No, sir.
No? Okay, can I get a motion for approval on the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of the consent calendar as presented.
Okay, a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. We'll vote on the consent calendar. And it's adopted 5-0. Department reports, Human Services Department.
Yes, I have just a few items. Our donation bins for the Holiday Toy and Food Basket Program have been placed at locations around Montclair, including City Hall, Senior Center, Recreation Center, our Fire Station number 1, and the Police Department. Donations will be accepted until Friday, December 13th. We've already received some food and toys, so thank you for that. If you do have a large donation and need a pickup or would like to make a monetary donation, you can contact our department or you can contact me after the meeting. I want to welcome everyone to attend the Holly Jolly event. It's this Thursday, December 5th from 6 until 8:30 p.m. at the Youth Center. The evening will include tree lighting, entertainment, and complimentary photos with Santa and Mrs. Claus. The event will also feature refreshments while supplies last and an area where children can write letters to Santa. Gift lights in memory or in honor of a loved one will also be available for purchase. This year we have added a new attraction, snow. We will have a play area and a few sled runs for the kids, so bring your mittens. We look forward to seeing you there. Our police and fire departments will be holding food and toy drives at Costco to support our holiday toy and food basket programs. Drives will be held at the Montclair Costco on Fridays, December 6th and the 13th from 10 to 2. And we will have a suggested list of needed items available the day of the event to help make your shopping easier. Our Community Activities Commission invites you to submit your entry for the Holiday Home Decoration Contest. Entry applications are available on the city website and are due this Friday, December 6th at 6 p.m. Winners will be announced at an upcoming city council meeting. And finally, Santa, Mrs. Claus, and their sleigh will be dashing through the streets of Montclair this Saturday, December 7th from 12 noon to 7 p.m., greeting residents and spreading holiday cheer. Please note that while Santa wants to visit every street, Montclair is a bit too big, so the route is changed every year to see as many streets as possible. To follow Santa's route and to see locations for toys to be donated, visit our city website or call our office number, 909-625-9479. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, City Attorney.
Yes. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I have the two items as indicated on the agenda. First one, for the City Council to meet in closed session regarding pending litigation in the matter of Conley versus Montclair. And the second is to meet with our designated labor negotiator, Mr. Starr, concerning the associations listed. Other than those two items, I have nothing else this evening.
Thank you. City Manager?
No items, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Regarding the mayor, first of all, with the consent of the council, I'd like to cancel the meeting on January 6, 2025. That's, any objections to that? Second of all, I'd like to adjourn this memory in the memory of former Mayor Dennis Yates of the city of Chino, who I believe he passed away 2 months ago. And there is a memorial for him. I believe it's later this week. Third of all, just a question to our city clerk regarding the elections. I know we have one of those spots is close, and I believe tomorrow is a certification of the results. We're not sure what time and all that, but sometime tomorrow we'll have the final certifications of the elections. So hopefully okay. So we'll wait for that. And finally, I just want to recognize Supervisor Hagman, the County of San Bernardino, regarding the ladder truck that was on the consent calendar. And with that, I will start with Councilmember Martinez.
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Lopez.
Couple items, yes. Before I forget, I have a note here. Michael Diaz, if I could please get that recusal map that reflects the members had to recuse themselves, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Where are we with respect to, I believe there was an additional 30 to 40 flashing stop signs on the docket to be installed. Are we close to getting those in? I do have a request. I promised the residents I'd put it out there. Orchard and Pradera, the south side, they would very much like a flashing stop sign.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. We haven't been able to install any of those recently. We have, we're almost half-staffed right now, but we are doing some recruitments. So as soon as we get those filled, we'll start on those again. And I believe the location that you're referencing is part of a grant. So we have to wait till we do the plans for the grant.
We haven't submitted it yet?
No, I'll be sending out an RFP for the design sometime at the end of this month and award it next year.
I appreciate the update, thank you. And Mr. City Manager, I know it's 3 hours into our evening. Could you please state what the process that the city uses in determining which alleyways get selected for paving and improvement? Specifically, I know there was a study done a few years back. Oh, perfect. And the determination process by which alleys are selected. And I have a comment after, there's a reason why I'm asking.
Yes, so there's been several studies or reviews of the alleyways. I believe I found something for a few years ago, and we went off that list preliminary, and I had our inspector go out to every single alleyway and score the condition of the alleyway. So we gave it, I believe, a poor condition, good condition, or if it's something that was just done. So we just gave it a numbering system, and we also looked at the number of impacted users around alleyways. So where there's, I guess, more traffic, if you will, then we rated those a little bit higher. So we gave it a ranking system, and that's how we assess them and we prioritize them.
And for the record, did any member of this council influence that decision
Not
as to
at
the
all.
selection?
No, this was all based on engineering factors, looking at the condition of each alleyway.
Thank you for that. And I bring this up because there's an accusation and some misinformation being put out on Facebook as if it were gospel. that one particular council member, me in particular, because I'm the only one that lives directly behind or in front of an alley, I somehow influenced that alley being serviced about 2.5 years ago. And that nothing could be farther from the truth, and I resent that as insinuation, and folks need to get their facts straight before you level complaints against council members. Thank you for the explanation, I very much appreciate it.
Sure.
And finally, I was just gonna ask with respect to the process, but I think the mayor addressed it as to whose election office does the city clerk rely on for the certification, whether it was the ROV or the Secretary of State, but that has been addressed. And if I'm not mistaken, any new or returning member of the council can be sworn in upon certification, correct?
But the city council has to certify the result.
Right. I just want that clear. All right, thank you. That was all I believe I had.
Councilmember Rue.
Following up with the last item, I remember a time, maybe 2014, when a council member was sworn in the moment the election was certified. The council hadn't acted on it then. Has the law changed since then?
That's never happened. We've always had the city council adopt a
Well,
resolution.
I'll talk to you privately about it. I know when it happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we need to wait for this council. Having said that, I too would like the recusal map, if you could get me a copy. And then lastly, because it's a long night, I want to note the passing of a business owner in Montclair, Susie Kirkpatrick. She owned Susie's Sweet Tooth on Benson for about 20 years. It's still in business under another owner. For many, many years, she helped do cake decorating classes, confectionery classes, taught people how to bake. She even worked with some of the schools trying to encourage young people into certain types of careers that would be along those lines. So I already sent a condolence to her family, longtime business owner, and I know she'll be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember that 2014, that was the last meeting that my good buddy, Councilmember Leonard Paulitz, was up here, so I'm pretty sure the staff was moving fast to get rid of Leonard Paulitz. We're adjourned.